everyone, and welcome, and thank you for joining us today. I'm so very excited. We have a very special guest today, and it's Joni Smith, head of the Scottish Government here in the United States. And Joni, we are so thrilled and honored to have you here today to talk to us a little about what's going on with the Scottish Government and everything else that's going on in the world right now. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be with you.
And so we just really wanted to talk a little bit about, I know that I've known you for a few years now, and I've heard you talk a lot about the Scottish Government and goals and welcoming people and talking about the Scottish diaspora. But I wanted to just ask you, if it's okay, a little bit about yourself. Where were you born and raised?
So I'm from a very small town on the east coast of Scotland called Arbroath, and I couldn't be prouder of it. It's a town of around 23,000 people, and I lived there all my life until I left to go to university at the age of 18. There's something very special about small town Scotland, the people, the sense of community, and my parents and some of my best friends are still there to this day. And prior to the current situation the world finds itself in, I try to get back there as often as possible. But being from Arbroath is particularly special when doing this job, because it's well known for three main things. One is the fish. So it's well known for the Arbroath Smoky, which is a local delicacy, and anyone who hasn't tried it must. It's also got a pretty excellent soccer to you team, who still, I think, hold the record for scoring the most goals in a professional match. They beat Bonaccord 36-0 in 1885, I think. I've probably got that number wrong, and I will now not be allowed to go home if I've got that year wrong, but it's something like that. And they're also having a pretty good run of it in the current football championships. So they're holding their own in the Scottish Championships. And then finally, and perhaps more importantly to our American audience, Arbroath is also well known for the Declaration of Arbroath. It was signed on the 6th of April, 1320, in Arbroath Abbey in my hometown. And it's particularly poignant for American audiences because, as well as being one of Scotland's most important historical documents, the 6th of April is the day that the American Scottish diaspora chose to mark as Tartan Day, which obviously celebrates the links between America and Scotland on an annual basis. So it's a small town, but it's small but mighty, and I'm very proud to call it home.
That's amazing, and I didn't know that you were born and raised in Arbroath, and what an amazing story. And this is such a significant year. Because of that, also it's the 25th year anniversary of Bravehearts, very significant on both counts. How did you come to work with the Scottish Government and find yourself in the US?
So I'm always intrigued when other people get asked this question, and I'm not sure mine is a particularly interesting tale, but for anyone that is interested, as I said, I left Arbroath when I was 18, and I went to university the University of Aberdeen, and I studied politics and international relations. When I first graduated, I spent a brief period as a journalist, working for a local commercial radio station, Radio Tay, in Dundee, not far from where I had grown up. There were bits of being a journalist. I'd always thought I wanted to be a journalist. That was my goal from most of my high school career. And there were bits of it I loved, but then there were also bits I didn't, and bits I wasn't so good at. But I loved the industry, and I knew I had a good instinct for it, but I fast realised I might be better on the other side of the house. So I actually went back to university and got my master's in corporate communications and public affairs. And following that, in 2005, I joined the Scottish Government Press Office. And from there, I was there for about 8 years, and I worked on a range of portfolio desks, as we call them, for different government ministers, and covered housing, sport, equalities, community, and health. And by the end, by the end of my 8 years, I was head of health communications within the press office. During that time, we experienced swine flu in 2009, and also a Legionnaires outbreak in Edinburgh. So anyone working in health comms right now has my utmost admiration and biggest empathy I could offer, because it is relentless. I actually left the press office, even although I thought I wouldn't. I thought that was my career for life, and I became private secretary to the then health secretary, Alec Neil. Without meaning to make it sound too grandiose, the closest thing you probably have to a private secretary is a chief of staff. It's a slightly different thing because of the way we are appointed non-politically, but you essentially run the ministerial office. From there, I went to the First Minister's Policy Unit, and then I went to head up the First Minister's Questions Briefing Unit. For anyone who doesn't know, just like the Prime Minister, the First Minister of Scotland undertakes a weekly question and answer session with opposition politicians. And I headed up the team that helped prep all the briefing that she might need in order to answer any of those questions. And from there, I applied for and got the most rewarding and exhausting job of my life, which is to head up the Scottish Government office here in the United States. To promote Scotland overseas is such a privilege, and definitely not a responsibility I take lightly. So yeah, that's my story, and that's where I came from. And I've got a year left on my posting, so excited to see what happens next.
Oh my goodness, so how long have you been here doing this in the United States?
So I have, on July 5th, I celebrated both my first wedding anniversary and my 3rd year at post. It wasn't intentional, I hadn't even realised the connection. But I celebrate my 3rd year at post, and I have known you and the diaspora community in LA for much of that time, and I can safely say it has passed in an absolute blink of an eye.
Well, we've been so honored to have you here on the West Coast and come and attend events here over the years and be so supportive. And it's wonderful, if I may say, to see a lady fulfilling this role. It's been such an honor and a privilege. So if we can, let's talk a little bit about the work that the Scottish Government does here in the US. I don't know if people are aware of what you do exactly and what your mission is.
So I always describe us as small but mighty. There's only a few of us, but the office, the Scottish Affairs Office within the British Embassy in Washington DC, which is where we're based, has been here. It was created in 2001. So there's been a few people who've had the post before me. But our job, in short, is to continue to improve Scotland's international reputation and promote Scotland to US audiences. And we do that by building partnerships and awareness of Scottish Government's approach to policy with global implications. For example, we've signed memorandums of understanding with the governors of California and New Jersey on working together on issues around climate change. We also had the governor of Maine in Scotland looking at some of our green energy solutions last year. Similarly, we had 6 different political and policy-based delegations visit Scotland from the US last year, looking at and exchanging information on a range of policy areas. Alongside that, we promote Scotland's culture, we facilitate cultural partnerships, we promote our higher education institutions. American students make up a significant part of overseas students that attend Scottish universities. We work with our engaged and enthusiastic diaspora community to ensure that you all can amplify our messages and share our messages with your huge networks. We work with the Friends of Scotland caucus on the Hill to highlight policies that members might be interested in, that the Scottish Government are doing, and also to celebrate uniquely Scottish moments on the Hill. So St Andrew's Day, Burns, Tartan Day, We work with our trade and investment agency, who are also out here, Scottish Development International, and our national tourism body, Visit Scotland, to promote tourism, to help increase exports, to increase investment back into Scotland. America is our largest overseas market for exports, and it is also our largest source of foreign direct investment, so a very important audience. And given the size of the team, we couldn't do it all without our stakeholders, and we're so grateful for the support that we get. I know this is going out beyond the ScotWeek LA and the LA diaspora community, so if anyone who doesn't already follow us would be interested in learning more about the work that we do, the easiest way to do that is to follow our Twitter account, which is @ScotGovUSA. I promised our comms person I'd get that plug in. So, but that is a very easy way to do it. And then we have different mailing lists and things that people can sign up to as part of from there.
And what we'll do here down below in we have a sort of comment section, but also there's, you know, another section where we will put all the links to your websites, all of your social media platforms. So everyone, if you didn't get that, look down below and you'll be able to see and link to everything Scottish Government and everything that we've talked about and everything else that you would like to have inserted into that area, so we can drive some traffic there for you. And we should follow what you're doing. It's an amazing work I didn't know about until I knew some of what you did, but until earlier this year, I didn't know the extent of your work. It's quite amazing. And how are you able to achieve and still do all this work during this pandemic? How has that affected what you're doing?
So, I mean, everything is different. In the initial stages of the response, the Scottish Affairs team based within the British Embassy, including myself, we volunteered as part of the Embassy's crisis response. There was a huge repatriation effort for every country around the world was experiencing that, but obviously the UK was no different. So there was a huge repatriation effort to get UK citizens back from America to their country of residence, and we volunteered as part of that effort. Now, like everyone else, we are pivoting and trying to think of creative ways to make virtual engagement and events interesting. I'm doing things like this, which is well outside my comfort zone, but is in the reality of the situation is this is one of the ways that we can engage with our very disparate networks that are spread right across the United States. So this is going to become more and more important. So I'm getting on board. But we'll be delivering, you know, for the rest of the year, we'll be delivering a series of events focused on priority policies, showcasing our culture, continuing to support export growth and investment, and also celebrating key Scottish moments, because we don't want to lose sight of that either. So plans are already well underway for virtual St Andrew's Day.
That sounds wonderful. I cannot wait to watch that, and we should all follow the Scottish Government so we know exactly when and where to tune in to watch virtual St Andrew's Day. How exciting that's going to be. And have you been able to travel back to Scotland? And if so, what is the Scottish Government doing currently in Scotland, again, to move forward their achievements and goals for what it is that they're doing?
So I haven't been able to travel back, and that is obviously particularly challenging, just because that's where family and friends are. We are enormously lucky to be supported by a wonderful network of colleagues and friends and contacts here in DC and across the US. And when you're working far away from home, those people do become your family. But I think I'll never take for granted the ability to just jump on a plane and get home ever again. And that's important learning, if nothing else. So, but video calling has been a wonderful thing. We speak to our families most days. We video call a couple of times a week, and you know, you feel connected to people that way. It's not the same, and I can't wait to give everyone a hug in person, but we will get there soon, hopefully. But in terms of the Scottish Government, much like the rest of the world, they're having to adapt to the new, less new now, but the new situation, and certainly the emerging medium-term situation. Home working is the new norm. There's obviously a small core team in supporting the First Minister and ministers as they deliver on what the Scottish people need in terms of the response to coronavirus. But even then, ministers who can work from home are working from home. From what I understand, there's around 9,000 employees currently working from home. So that is a complete change in our approach. The entire Scottish Government structure has changed, with people being seconded from right across the organisation to help with the response. And I imagine that will continue to be the case for the medium term until we get to the next phase of the coronavirus outbreak.
And so I think I kind of know a little bit of the answer to this next question, but you kind of just explained, but what are the Scottish Government's main priorities currently? So
I think at home, the main priorities are the response in both well-being and economic terms to the COVID-19 outbreak. You'll be unsurprised to hear me say that. Those of us based overseas are absolutely part of that response. We are promoting Scotland as an outward-facing nation whose response to the outbreak is embedded and reflects our national performance framework. So values of kindness, dignity and compassion will play through, and we will continue to promote what Scotland is doing to try and what the Scottish Government is doing to respond to the COVID-19 crisis. And then I think more specifically, we'll continue to promote the Scottish Government's policies, which will continue to have international significance. For example, I've mentioned it a couple of times, but climate and green energy will continue to grow in importance as we get closer to the rescheduled COP26 in Glasgow next year. As well as that, our work with Scottish Development International and other partners, such as your good friends at Scottish Business Network, on international trade, innovation, showcasing investment opportunities will become, I think, even more central to our work than they already were.
And that makes a lot of sense. Everyone's going to need a lot of help moving forward, I feel like, and this can only do well for everyone involved. So with having talked a little bit about that, can you tell the viewers a little bit more about the stakeholders and the importance of your work with the stakeholders?
So I've mentioned it a few times already, but we are a small team. There is 4 of us who look to engage with key partners across the US, from political to policy to diaspora to alumni to culture partners to higher education institutions. So it's a big ask and we can't do everything. So stakeholders are absolutely essential to everything that we do, and in order for us to succeed and deliver on the Scottish Government's objectives for the US office, whether it is diaspora groups looking to keep our history, heritage and culture, and by extension our visibility alive through celebrations of those key Scottish moments, St Andrew's Day, Burns, Tartan Day. I always say, why have one national celebration when you can have 3? And we are blessed with that in the US. And then also groups like New York Tartan Week's organising committee and yourselves at ScotWeek LA, who are looking to build on those historic connections and widen it out to build and increase economic opportunities that may result from those historic connections. We also have a network of global Scots who help Scottish companies to develop in international markets, and our network of university alumni who are either from the US or are currently based here. As I've mentioned before, the US is one of the biggest providers of international students to Scottish universities. So that is a growing group, and we're very interested in their destinations and the work and their experience of Scotland, because very often they are some of our biggest champions. So our work is to showcase the very best that Scotland has to offer across the United States, but without that broad spectrum of stakeholders and networks amplifying that, we wouldn't be able to do it. So I guess final point for me on that is a big thank you to everyone who works with us, who engages with us, and looks to support and amplify our messaging across their even bigger networks. And we're really, really grateful for that.
Well, and I can speak for ScotWeek in saying that we are so proud to be able to help in that endeavor. And if there's anything you can think of that we can do moving forward, we will continue our work with SBN, and we're very honored to be able to help in any way, shape, or form that we can with any of these goals that you have. And as we wrap up this wonderful interview, I just want to ask you, what do you miss most right now about Scotland, since you haven't been able to go home?
Besides everything.
Yes.
I know this is such a point, I get asked this question quite often, and this is such a poignant moment to be asked that question, not least because of what I said before about the ability to get there being much more limited than we've taken for granted in the past. But I think probably the thing I miss the most is the scenery. I lived in Edinburgh immediately prior to living in DC, and the fact that you have the sea, the mountains, the city, the coastline, the countryside, pretty much all on your doorstep, is just truly remarkable. DC is a beautiful city, and in some places quite hilly, but there's nothing I think that quite rivals Calton Hill, Arthur's Seat, Blackford Hill. It's just wonderful. And right now, I've mentioned it before, but I'm also desperately missing friends and family. And perhaps, if I'm honest, I also miss a fish supper from a proper fish and chip shop.
That's wonderful. Well, Joni Smith, it has been delightful. It's been a privilege and an honor to have you on today and to see your beautiful face and talk with you a little bit about what's going on with the Scottish Government. Thank you so much for making this time and this effort to be with us here today.
Thank you, Cindy. A pleasure.
And just again, to let everyone know, there'll be links below so you can stay in touch with the Scottish Government and find out more what you might be able to do to help and get engaged and follow and watch what Joni Smith and her team are doing. It's amazing to see all of the different entrepreneurs and businesses and the diaspora that we're getting to know around the world now. It's truly remarkable, and thank you so much for being on here with us today.
Thank you.
All the very best.